What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 62 of the Operators Podcast. We have a guest today. Jason is out. We have Sarah Carusona. You could follow her on Twitter. I've tried to recruit her. She's a CTC alum. She was at Olakai, which is an awesome 9-figure brand, for a couple of years, and now she's a fractional head of growth. So we kind of dive into that. We dive into the agency days, if she would hire CTC, her personal feelings on Taylor Holiday. And then we talk about TV, M&Ms, and what I would do if I was a fractional head of growth for Simple Modern. It's a good episode, probably the best episode ever. So thank you for listening. Thank you for Phil. Thank you, Northbeam. I love and use you both. Talk to you later. What's up, everybody? I use Fulfill. Fulfill is my ERP, my order management software. It does EDI for me. So what do all those things mean? If you are a small Shopify merchant, you probably hook your Shopify up to a 3PL or a warehouse, or maybe you're running fulfillment yourself out of your garage. We did that at one point. Orders come in, orders go out pretty easy. Where it gets difficult is when you're tracking multiple inventory sources. So like different factories making the same stuff with different costs, different components coming in. That ends up being a pain for accounting. And then also different inventory sources going to customers. So if you have 3 warehouses and it's not just going to Shopify, it's going to Amazon, it's going to wholesale, it just ends up being a lot of different information to pass around. And how do you make sure that runs smoothly without just throwing bodies at the problem? That's what Fulfill solves. So it's an ERP. There's a couple ERPs in the industry. NetSuite is the big one, and ask anyone who's ever used NetSuite if they're happy, and they will say no. I am happy with Fulfill. We are using it. ERPs are a hard, messy business because it's so many different parties passing a lot of information, but it ends up being the nervous system of your entire company, right? Like if something fucks up on Amazon, I feel it because of Fulfill. So it's the ERP uniting everything. It also does EDI, right? So this is a little more technical, but Best Buy, Nordstrom's, all of these people, when they place orders, it's coming into your system via EDI, and nobody knows how that works. Like no 3PLs have it figured out. It is just an old, archaic system that I naively thought would take a week to set up, but no, it can take months to set up and actually test that it's working perfectly. Fulfill does all that. It sets up EDI integrations and then it stays with Fulfill. So you can switch warehouses, you can switch inventory sources without having to redo EDI integrations, which is the death of a lot of companies. So if you're shipping stuff to people from multiple locations, eventually you'll need an ERP. I use Fulfill and I've been happy with it. They're a sponsor of the podcast. All 3 sponsors I personally use. So interact with Ridge and you will see how we're using these sponsors. So thank you, Fulfill. Talk to you later.
So I'm Sarah Carusona. I'm from a small town called Ottawa, Illinois, like Ottawa, Canada, but not as cool. It's about 2 hours outside of Chicago. What?
Said here.
Yeah. I've actually never been to Ottawa, Canada, but I would like to, just so I could say I've been there. But yeah, I've had a pretty maybe unique career trajectory. I have a degree in dance. I was determined at 6 years old to become a professional dancer, and gosh damn it, I was going to do it. And I did it, and I was a professional dancer and a professional waitress for a very long time, living in 2-bedroom apartments with 3 people, or living in a studio apartment that didn't have a kitchen, but what I called my toilet kitchen, where I would do my dishes in my bathtub. So definitely.
I have never heard of a toilet kitchen. That's an amazing first.
Yeah. So I kind of got into the fitness industry because I was sick of being broke. And I started to get introduced to, social media marketing and working at small gyms and this kind of world of selling things online. And I started my own blog and newsletter and selling online and offline programs. And I was like, this is a really cool mixture of the right and left side of my brain. And I'm enjoying that. And my husband was like, hey, you could probably do that as like your job. And I kind of laughed at his face. But then I was also like, yeah, I'm kind of sick of counting squats for people. So, and it would be kind of cool to get actual health insurance. So maybe let me explore this. And so I worked my way up. And for the last about 8 years, been working in digital marketing, ecom. Most recently, I was at Common Thread Collective for about 2 years. I started managing half of the paid social team, kind of oversaw the whole transition on iOS 14 in 2020. Then I was promoted into growth strategy, took on a pretty large roster of clients right away, and did that for about 8 months. I got poached to go to a CPG brand that 7 weeks after I started, they decided that they were less interested in selling online and more interested in selling in store. And so they got rid of the growth team and hired a sales team instead, which was a little unfortunate, but it actually gave me a roundabout way to get to Olakai. So Olakai was actually my client when I was at CTC. And so I had a fun, interesting situation where I was in conversations with Taylor Holiday about going back to CTC, actually had an offer in hand, and I got a call from the CMO at Olakai to come work for them. So as far as people that Taylor Holiday might need forgiveness from, I might be up there. But I went to Olakai and worked there for a little over 2 years. So I oversaw the whole overall P&L, as well as all the media, 7 figures across digital and traditional channels, so everything from paid social, paid search, TV, out of home, influencers, UGC, direct mail. I oversaw our website, CRO, and merchandising, retention. We had a loyalty program for a little while, as well as own channels. Built out our reporting warehouse. They're actually they're part of a holding company that's 4 brands. So there's Melon, which is the premium hat company, as well as Rourke and Kanan, an apparel company and a sunglass company. So kind of built out systems for that whole group. And then what am I missing? I also oversaw our inventory management for the first year of my employment there, but then luckily that kind of got shifted over into its own department and team, which I was very grateful for. But yeah, and then most recently I left Olakai. My husband and I decided that we want to move out of the country and go travel. So I decided to go out on my own and actually just accepted a role as a fractional head of growth at a supplement brand called Alpha Lion, and I'll be starting with them in July.
Ooh, hell yeah. Where do you plan on traveling?
So we're going to move to Argentina first. Our plan is Buenos Aires. I want to learn Spanish, and it's also going to be easier to be in a similar time zone.
Totally.
Well, Sarah's the smart one on the show today. That's great.
Yeah. There's a reason why there's no Jason. So
So every time he's not here, it's like the pens or the punching bag.
Dude, he's a hard guy to nail down.
Yeah.
Sarah, it's a very unique journey, but I think anyone who is high performing in this industry has a very unique journey. I didn't know you were a CDC alum, so that marks the second guest in a row who came from there. And Taylor Holiday he's quick to anger but quick to forgive. So I'm sure you're in his good graces by this point.
CDC is like in college football, you'll have these coaches that had all these assistants they hired that went on to be head coaches and be successful, and they have these massive coaching trees. And I feel like that's CDC and D2C e-com. There's just so many talented people that have gone through there through the years.
Yeah. It was a unique place, and what Taylor's doing, I think, for the industry and has helped so many individuals, including myself, just accelerate their careers is really admirable.
Yeah, I asked Shireen this. I'm going to ask you. So, in your new role, would you hire CTC again?
I knew you were going to ask this, so I was like ready for it. I would. In my new role, I mean, there's a lot of things that depend on that. And Alpha Lion actually was my client at CTC. So I think it would be a little hard for that particular situation. But in general, yes, I would hire CTC. I think my philosophy on agencies is kind of similar to Shireen's, where I want to have as much of the strategy internal and as much of the quote unquote button pushing external. But if you don't already have the strategy internal for whatever reason, it's not your skill set, it's not something that you're aware of, whatever that is, that's where I think it's the perfect scenario to bring in an agency who can give you that strategy and help to educate you. And I think being really transparent and honest about your desire to possibly bring it internal at a certain point helps develop a really good relationship with that agency as well, because they know what you're looking for, and they can also, understand, hey, is this a client that we're going to have for a year or 2 years, or how do we design the structure of the contract so that it's really beneficial for both of us, so that it could be long term. But that's how I would kind of go about hiring different agencies.
So, Sarah, why do you want the button pushing to be external, just out of curiosity?
I think that it's something that you can get a lot cheaper, and especially if you're able to hire overseas. And I think that it's a way that you're able to, it was what I did at Olakai, transparently. So we had CTC for the first about 6 months of me being there. And then after that, I ended up hiring a very small agency called Lurk, which is all CTC alumni, to be our Meta and Google media buyers. And we got rid of all of the creative and all of the, so they didn't do any kind of creative production or any kind of growth strategy, because at that point it was like, for CTC, part of what I was paying them for was the growth strategy. And unfortunately or fortunately, I was a growth strategist. So it's like, I don't need to pay to have that. I'm now that internally. And so I really just needed to have the buyers. And then we had the creative strategy already internal as well. And I think that allowed us to really maximize, just from a P&L perspective, how much we were paying in OpEx.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that businesses are dynamic things. And I always kind of point to fulfillment, where when your first order, you have to ship it yourself. No one's going to do that for you. And then at a certain point, you have to outsource it because it ends up being too complex. But then when you get really big, when you do $1 billion a year in revenue, you bring fulfillment back in house. And I think media buying is a very similar thing, where no one's going to set up your first Facebook ad campaign. You have to do that yourself, because or else you don't have a business. And then there's this big middle where it's yeah, you need to pick something to own, right? It's either going to be creative or it's going to be media buying. It's very hard to own both of those things when you're $5, $10, $15 million a year. But at a certain point, I think really big companies bring it in house, and then maybe at the other end of the curve, giant companies push it out again, right? It's this back and forth with media buying.
Yeah. I also find that when media buying's in-house, at least my experience has been that the media buyers are less motivated in some regards. And there's there's a motivation for that external media buyer to always be kind of proving themselves. And I've also ran into situations where if you've got a media buyer internal, they're like, well, I'm not working the weekends. And I mean, that's not part of my, overall agreement. But agencies are like, yeah, we're going to check every single day.
Right. Nobody grinds harder than agency people. And it's because the level of frantic, we talked about this with Reen, it's a different game because you have to earn your keep every single day.
It's a total performance game, right?
Yeah, it totally is. And it's very true too that, and this was something I was really conscious of, and I feel like I could do a whole conversation on this, but going from agency to brand, there were so many things where I was like, oh, that's why the client always does that. That's why the client's always kind of a pain in the ass and always late and, doesn't have the information, because the amount of things that the client is managing and the amount of messages and things that are coming at them is very, very large. And a lot of times there's a lot of things that might not be in their control, but I don't know, theoretically should be. And I think that it can make that a really interesting relationship. And a lot of times they've got a lot of pressure on themselves. And so the agency does unfortunately become a scapegoat in a lot of regards. And that was something I was very conscious of as I went to the brand side, is I was like, I don't want that to be that way. I want to hold you accountable and let's have really clear conversations, but I want to treat this as a relationship, as if you were on my team or my employee, and let's set expectations and let's meet or not meet them, but trying really hard not to, just blame everything on the agencies, which I think unfortunately tends to happen.
Oh, it happens all the time. I want to put the conversation to fractional CMO. I believe that's the role you're going to.
Head of growth, but okay. I'll take the promotion though.
Yeah, okay. Any sort of fractional high-level role, I think there's a lot of interest in brands hiring this, and you see it with head of growth, CMO, CFO, COO. And why did you decide to make that move? And I'm be curious where you think it could go wrong in your new role.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so I decided to do fractional, I think, for a couple of reasons. I mean, full transparency, I think part of the reason was when I started to realize that I was probably not going to stay at Olokai long term. I, had the typical thought process of, okay, where do I want to go? What companies do I want to look at? And I found myself really unmotivated to do that. And I couldn't figure out why. And then I started thinking about just being able to work for myself and be able to, the times that I remember being most excited to go to work on Monday was when I was in the fitness industry and I was developing my own content and my own business and my own, kind of thing. I just didn't like counting squats. and and so I was like, I thought, being able to do something that's kind of mine and I own it in a sense felt really good. And I think that on top of that, when I get into a business, I have learned that I get really into it, and it's hard for me to separate myself and to not be thinking about it 24/7 every single day. And I think I've got a little burned out, just transparently. And so I think that part of me wanting to go fractional was kind of on twofold: was like, one, set some boundaries for myself. Two, be able to really own that relationship and say, like, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm not doing. And three, be able to test it out. And the wonderful thing about Jordan Ferris, who's the CEO of Alpha Line, and I actually had two different fractional roles that I was going between, and ended up going with Alpha Lion because of specifically of Jordan. He's just a good leader. He's tried to hire me a couple times, and he was trying to hire me full time as well, but I convinced him on fractional. And he's just somebody who I know that we can trust and have a really good open conversations about, hey, is this working fractionally? Is it not working fractionally? Like, do you really need somebody full time? Do I feel like that should be me, or do I feel like that's somebody I can help hire for you and I'll go off and do something else? And I feel like, well, it'll be a really good, hopefully, kind of trusting relationship where we can have those open conversations. Because I think where it could go wrong is when the expectations are misaligned and there's not that open communication.
Yeah. So I guess the thought process, why did you choose to go fractional instead of making an agency, which is the same thing, but with different branding?
Oh my gosh, you're the second person to ask me if I want. Actually, you're not. You're probably like the fifth or sixth person to ask me if I want to start an agency. I I have seen the stress of agency owners, and it does not attract me as something that I want to do. And I think just in life, yes, you could probably make bank if you started an agency. And I've thought about it as like one agency idea that I have, if I ever were to start one, would be an agency that was specific for a 6 to 9 month period of time to basically help you build out your internal team. Because I think that that's something that I've found and has come up a lot as I've been talking to different people, as people are, higher level VPs or C-suite are saying, hey, we are currently everything is external right now, but we want to bring it in-house, but we don't know how. And so I think that there's might be an interesting thing there with an agency that's able to come in and be like, hey, we're going to help you actually hire, build out the team, the systems, the processes for you. At the same time, though, yeah, just the amount of stress and the level of scapegoating that happens. I don't know if I'm there or ready for that yet, but I don't know. Maybe one day.
Can we go there? Can we go to the how would you build out an internal team? So like if a VP came to you, that's an interesting experiment. You guys want to go there? I want to know what she thinks. If I'm like a VP of marketing or CMO, I just got hired by a brand. I've got all these agencies. I want to start in-housing things.
Yeah.
Sarah, go.
Yeah. So Matt, it's funny because the other opportunity that I had for fractional role was exactly that. It's a skincare brand. They came to me. They have literally everything in their e-com is external. They're 7 figures. They have one agency that's managing everything: Amazon, e-com, website, creative, paid media, retention, the whole gamut. They were paying, I'm not kidding you, $1.6 million to this agency. It was like 25K retainer and 10% of ad spend. I didn't get access to all of their all of their different platforms because they didn't want to freak the agency out. But I was able to see a couple things in terms of their media mix. They were spending over 50% of their budget on Google, and their Google CPAs were higher than they were on Meta. And I was like, this agency is stealing your money. It's ridiculous. And then on Amazon, I searched for them on Amazon and they didn't come up. And I was like, what is happening? So one, that's a little bit of a side note of there's still a lot of opportunity there. But what I basically pitched to them is I said, look, what I think you need is, and it depends on the size of the business, but I think you need kind of three main roles. You need somebody who's going to manage media. You need somebody who's going to manage web. And then you need somebody who's going to manage content and creative. I debated back and forth if you needed a second person for retention, but I decided that I think you could possibly combine web and retention together. And basically what I pitched to them is hire a head of growth, which I was going to come in as the head of growth for a period of time, then hire somebody, then get 3 senior manager level, close to director levels, one for paid media, one for content, and then one for web and retention. And then have a mixture of internal and external kind of support systems underneath each of those. So for the person who's managing media, we hire a buyer for Google, we hire a buyer for Meta, we hire a buyer for Amazon. Ideally, you get a buyer for Amazon and Google. For content, you probably get one internal designer and then have some kind of external design support that can kind of churn out things a little bit quicker if you need, or maybe it's like a UGC agency or something along those lines. And then on the web side, get a probably VA or somebody who's able to do the actual kind of product setups, the campaign setups, things of that nature. I want the button pushing external, and there's a lot of places that you can kind of get that for pretty cheap, and then possibly have somebody internal who's actually doing the own channel campaign management, etc. But the content person and designer should be able to support both the paid and the web and own channel side of things. So doing that and doing the math in terms of how much I think the kind of going rate is for each of those positions, and then the support, and then plus the head of growth fee, I figured that we could probably do it for about $1 million and save them about $500,000, if not more, a year.
And that is just if the business doesn't grow, right?
Mhm.
Like the last 12 months fees were 1.6 million. I think you bring up a good point about how agencies charge. It's how do you align a brand's growth objectives with the agency fees, right? And no one has cracked it. You get a percentage of ad spend,
Yeah.
or you get a monthly fee that's high that has to go up or down depending on work. So,
Yeah.
is that one reason you decided to become a fractional head of growth and not launch an agency?
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't one of the reasons, I guess, but it is a good point. And I think it becomes more and more challenging the bigger the company is. So, I mean, we ran into this with Olakai, honestly, when I was at CTC and when I was at Olakai, because for Olakai, as well as many other brands, their North Star is contribution dollars. So that's what they want to achieve at the end of the day. But the challenge became that CTC was managing only part of their media. And there's a whole other part of the media like TV and direct mail that would be large percentages of the budget that they don't have control over, as well as like control over shipping and returns. Or, there's just a lot of other things that kind of go into that. And so it becomes really hard to manage contribution dollars when you only are owning part of the puzzle. And so I think that that's where, if you're able to come to a really good relationship of a definition of bottom line that is only with the expenses that the agency controls, that's where I think you could possibly build something out. But yeah, it becomes very difficult, because at the end of the day, the agency isn't going to be the last decision maker, right? Like the brand's going to make the decisions that they want to make at the end of the day. And so I think it becomes the agency is always kind of at the risk of not getting, the credit or the bonus for what they may have achieved with the brand.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Operator's Northbeam ad unit. So 30 seconds, I'm going to tell you all about how, if you have any problems with Northbeam, you can directly message Austin, the CEO. He is there. He will set up your ad account. He will make your bed. He'll give you cookies. Really, they have a dedicated team of people, probably 30, 40, 50 reps at this point, who will make sure Northbeam is working correctly and functioning so you can get amazing data out of this ecosystem. They will be more hands-on than any meta rep will ever be, and they're going to help you understand where your ad dollars are best spent, best positioned, and which ads are working. My team works with the Northbeam team literally every day. They're in my Slack. Maybe you don't get the same level of support as an operator, but they will be there to make sure it's working. And if you're not happy at all, just email Austin. He will take care of you. We use Northbeam every day. It's a benchmarking tool. It's super helpful for forecasting, daily pacing, inter-hour pacing. So we can see like if we just launched an ad in 2 hours, if it's working or not. That's what Northbeam does for us. So thank you, Northbeam, for the support. I'm customer probably number one. So thank you so much.
Well, one thing to add regarding Northbeam, because we just went through a contract renewal with them on their specifically on the MMM, and we got a pretty sweetheart deal. And I expect them to come back to us and raise our price, and they kind of deserve it. I was like, let me reach out to the team, and see how it's going, right? Because I'm not in the day to day. I get feedback. And the team was like, they have improved the MMM so much since we started it that they were like, we should definitely pay for this increase. So, and my team hates every agency and most SaaS. The only person that hates SaaS, the only more than my team is Sean, Frank. But yeah, I mean, they came to us, they're like, hey, you guys got the sweetheart deal. We were one of the first MMM clients. And I was very, very pleased when my team was like, it's really working well for us. So that's my little MMM plug.
Okay, so I've got a pivot here. I've got a strategy question that I want to throw out to the group. I have been deep in the weeds of actually like Meta and our advertising strategy over the last week. And this is my free consulting. This is why I'm on the show. I basically get free consulting. So, and you all get to listen to it. So I want to hear some, I want to introduce a topic and then just kind of like discuss it with you guys. And here's the general setup. We've got a omni-channel brand where we have, 20, 30 million acquired customers. A lot of people have bought one of our products. So there's a lot of people out there, but only probably like 1 million of them have bought off our website. So anytime we get a quote unquote new customer on our website, some of the time this is somebody who already has our stuff. And some of the time this is actually truly a new to brand customer. So the first question I have for the group is, and I was actually really curious about this with you, Sean, is how much do you segment your advertising strategy to go after returning customers, and how much do you just really focus on new customers? Because what I was seeing in our numbers, and I just love to hear all the perspectives on this, is that we were just not excluding returning customers very well or very frequently. And as a result, our CPAs were just exploding. And we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, I think, on the pod. Meta, we were basically paying Meta to go and target all these people that, from my point of view, were probably already coming back, although I know it drove some incrementality. So I'd love to hear how you guys think about that. How intentional do you get about, hey, performance marketing is going and getting new people versus keeping existing customers engaged in the funnel?
You bring up a good point, Mike, and this is one of the biggest problems in the industry today is what is actually CAC, right? We talk about it as like customer acquisition cost. And I think I brought this up a couple of weeks ago that when Warby Parker went public, they were just using cost per order. They were treating marketing budget divided by how many orders, and that's their CAC because it sounds better.
Sean, I got one for you. Crack. Yeah. Customer reacquisition cost. Yeah. I'm like, I really think this might be a thing. I think crack, this is my contribution to the lexicon of D2C marketing is you've got your CAC and you've got your crack.
Yeah. And then originally we use an NCAC, so a new customer acquisition cost. So we actually look at what is the cost per net new customer. Mm-hmm. And so you have to have a database of all your customers, and Amazon makes that really difficult, right? So you're right. So I'm going to tie 2 points together. Sarah talked about project-based agency retainers, right? And we're looking for a project-based agency retainer to set up either Elevar or Blot Out to set up a true new customer event pixel. And what that will be is like right now, like you have pixel data that fires on Meta and it's like, hey, this is a new customer or whatever, according to Meta. But you can on server side using Blot Out or Elevar or some other technology, make it trigger only on a net new Shopify customer. And I think eventually you could build a data warehouse where Meta's letting you pass back information, where you could put in whatever full customer list you have and be like, this person is not in here. They are actually a true net new customer. And then you could optimize for that in Meta. So Mike, you went from behind the ball on Meta ads to this is brand new cutting edge stuff. How do you actually get brand new net people to your business? And no one's solved that. I think that's why we've had Meta issues post iOS 14 is like, what is true Meta incrementality, right? How do you actually find these people? So
Mike, have you guys invested in trying to actually build out some kind of data warehouse of your actual customers and then using every box that you ship by channel in some way? Do you try to get information on that customer?
We really, so there was a period really early on in the business when we were pretty much all Amazon. And this is before, I think for kind of data privacy reasons, Amazon started to restrict the flow of information. So there was a period in, call it maybe 2017, we got into the Amazon. This is actually a funny story. Amazon opened a bunch of stuff up via API, and one of my co-founders, was like a huge data guy who loved working with really big data sets. And so Amazon opens this stuff up and gave it to some marketplace people, like gave them a heads up, hey, this is open. And then after like 3 or 4 weeks, they sent us an email and they're like, what the hell are you doing? They're like, you're using this 10x more than everybody else combined. Like, what are you doing? And what we were doing is we were basically via API, we were going in and we were pulling like everything we could. And he used it to build LTV curves for Amazon, which was super interesting. We were able to look at repeat purchaser. I mean, like some stuff that basically you can't really get now because Amazon obfuscates that data. So that was pretty interesting and helpful. But that was when we were kind of just Amazon. And then we get into Target and really there's no trackbacks on physical retail. Like the closest you can get, and we haven't done this yet, we're debating whether we would do it, is what some people will do is they will do like a kind of a register for your warranty. And the whole idea behind the register for warranty is just that you've got some kind of tracking of what's going on, but it's imperfect. Your conversion rate's not going to be amazing. So even that's going to be pretty limited. And, at this point, about 50% of our sales are happening in physical retail, about 50% digital, but a lot of those digital are happening on Amazon and we can't tie those back to customers. And so you really get into a situation where it's basically impossible. So you have to kind of make qualitative decisions and say, hey, does this qualitatively make sense? And then do the numbers seem to validate it? So one of the things that we've started to do, I looked at our numbers and realized, okay, our, new customer, Sean, to use your term, our kind of new customer acquisition cost. If you just take total marketing spend digitally on non-Amazon ads, but just digital ad spend, and you divide that by new customers according to Shopify, like new to Shopify's database for our brand. We had only had in the last several months, like 3 days where we were sub $20, which for us, we don't have the same amount of nominal gross profit dollars that, a Lomi or a Ridge or somebody else might have. So we want to keep that actually pretty low. And we had only had a few days where we'd gotten under that. And then 2 of those 3 days that it's happened in the last, 150 days happened in the last week as we started to really look at exclusions. So my intuition was we're doing a lot of paying Meta to drive traffic purchases that probably would have already happened. Let's start really hammering in on exclusions. We started using some Shopify audience stuff. And the combination is all of a sudden we're seeing our efficacy on that number get a lot better. what I'm trying to really understand is how do I drive that even further? Like how do I help our team to drive that further? And I think the point that you guys are making is kind of the point, especially when you have customers coming from disparate places. How do you try to get as much of that data? Like, it's like you're not going to be able to give Facebook the whole picture. Can you give it 30% of the picture? Can you give it 50% of the picture to drive better results? And that's what we're wrestling with right now.
Yeah. And Mike, something that was interesting that we found is, I know we're talking about returning customers, but also returning visitors. One of the things that we started to see more recently before I left Olakai was that our returning visitor rate coming from Meta was spiking. So we were basically going after people more frequently who had
It was basically a retargeting machine.
Yeah, exactly. And we found that it was mostly with ASC. And so we were kind of similar thing, using CDP exclusions, using all the exclusions that you can via Meta and CAPI and all of those. I think I read somebody had a Twitter thread where they were also using like UTM exclusions, but it's a challenging thing. And my other question would be, are you able to get new to brand customer data or count from Amazon? And is there a way?
Yeah, so Amazon's opened some stuff up, and I think the way they do, the way they do new to brand is like within the last 12 months or 18 months or something, which isn't perfect because when you've got a product that lasts longer, like a Ridge wallet, or a Simple Modern bottle or whatever, that it's made of stainless steel in it, and you might not need a new one, for 15 months or something. It's not perfect, but we've been using that data and that's been helpful. I mean, to some extent, one of the ways we're thinking about growing the brand is just what is our guess at net new customers of the brand every day. And that's how big the snowball is growing. And that's the whole exercise, right? Is just how do you add, we know that we have a really high net promoter score. Our net promoter score is like 91 or some kind of absurd number. So really the game is, we just got to get more people, tacked onto the snowball. So we're using some of the Amazon reporting that they give us with 1P to estimate, and you might have better or worse 3P reporting. I don't know. It's weird to me that 1P and 3P have different reporting. As a side note, I don't know why it's that way. But they have totally different reporting tools. But anyway, so yeah, we've got some of that.
What's your media mix?
So in general, and again, I'd love to hear the group's thoughts on this. What we have on the server side, I'll give them a shout out because they've actually been really great partners to work with. This is a Jeremy Recco, is we've been working with Edge Mesh, and those guys have been great on kind of like us being able to look at the data from our side of things. But we are using basically three main sources right now: Meta, Google, and TikTok. But the TikTok data on the server side is just so bad that it almost looks like bots. It's really wild. We're seeing clicks where the engagement time is 3 seconds when they're on site, and you're like, okay, that looks like a bot. To
TikTok
me,
user.
Yeah, well, and maybe that is just that we have fried the Zoomer generation to the point where their attention span is 3 seconds. I don't know, but either way, we're like, well, we don't. One of the ways I've started to think about what you're paying for with advertising is you're paying for consideration as much as you're paying for action. And so if I can pay 60 cents a click and get 35 seconds of consideration from a Facebook user, there's no way I'm paying for 3 seconds of a TikTok user's consideration. There's no rate where that click's going to make sense. So we've kind of been pivoting away from putting money towards TikTok right now, and it's mostly, I would say, on the Google side, it's mostly Google Shopping and then Meta. So we're not particularly creative in that respect.
Yeah,
Mike, you're you said you figure you guys have 30 million customers of your products.
So this month, this is a crazy stat. This month, we will manufacture the 50 millionth water bottle or 50 millionth piece of hydration that we've built in the history of the company.
And I guess have you guys taken a swag at how many unique customers across all channels? What's a reasonable
Okay, guess? So here's another pet theory I've got going on. The internet gave us the ability to look at data in a unique way. Have you guys seen the thing about alcohol consumption, drinks per user by decile? You guys seen this?
No, I'm not a
Okay.
fucking nerd like you. What?
I know I am a nerd. I just so if you look at how many drinks, okay, we're gonna play a little game.
Drinking game on the operator's pod.
Yeah.
All right, I'm ready.
Okay, so I'll start easy. How many? What percentage of the population drinks zero drinks? Drinks zero drinks a week on average.
I've seen the data, so I'm not playing the game.
Sean's not going to play. So
10%.
Okay, so the actual number is, let's see if I can pull up this chart. The average number is like 30% of the population. Just it's like zero. They don't drink anything. How much do you think the top decile? So like these are the people that drink the absolute most. How many drinks per week do you think they average?
7, 10,
Okay.
20. Like it's got to be high, right? This has got to be one
74.
Weird. Yeah. Oh, what the fuck?
74. 74 drinks. If you're in the top 10% of drinkers, you average 74 drinks a week. Now, that is the most insane idea ever, but it's a power law. Basically, here's the point. The point is whether you're talking about alcohol consumption or miles driven in a car or, number of drinks bought at Sonic or anything else, what you learn when you get into any data set is that it's just these massive power laws. And it's counterintuitive, right? You would think that the population, well, there's some people who don't drink very often. There's some people who have a couple drinks a week. Maybe there's some people that have 10, but you would never think that there's people running around there that have 75 drinks a week. In the same way, it turns out, I think with every consumer brand, that this is typically that you get some similar behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So for my theory, I'll communicate the theory and then you guys can vet this. My theory is that there's about 20 million purchasers in the United States that are driving a ton of the 20 or 30 million that are driving a ton of the insulated drinkware sales, maybe 50, 60%.
So there's somebody who got 74
That's exactly right.
pieces of drinkware.
Yep. And this is typically women, 25 to 45, that they don't have one, they don't have two, they have 20. They have a cabinet full. Like my wife was telling me, I was looking at add to carts and I was like, man, I don't understand. Like our conversion rate on add to carts seems low. Like, why is that? And she was like, well, it's funny you would ask that because I've talked to a lot of women recently that'll tell me they'll throw something in their cart and they won't buy it until their husband gives them permission to buy another bottle. And I'm like, wow. I don't know that women need their husband's permission, but it's just like like an idea of like, I'm just putting this here as a placeholder until I have the money or until like, I won't be viewed as crazy for buying another bottle. And
that sounds
so
like a good marketing hook. You don't need permission.
Yeah, it is a good marketing hook. So
for sure.
So anyway, like I think it's actually another power law going on, and I think that we don't have any ideas on our uniques, but my guess is that what we would find is if we've sold 50 million bottles, you've got 10 to 20 million customers max, and that in there you've got a cohort of people that are crazy.
Like, do you know? Just like Keurig has 34 million homes. They've been around 26 years. Arguably one of the greatest CPG executions ever. Like they sell like $7 billion a year worth of coffee pods or some stupid ass number.
And they bought Dr. Pepper.
And they bought Dr. Pepper. Totally, and they buy all this other shit. So like, think of like Mike, I don't know why my brain is immediately going to like incremental reach and how many more places can you find to reach people that you're already not reaching? Because you're entering a household penetration number of like very large consumer companies. Yeah. And they only spend money on, they basically sit on television all day, every day for a reason, because everybody knows them now. That's the game. So like how many more millions of people can you possibly reach? And then where are you not?
Yeah. Well, and I'm glad you brought this up, Matt, because this has been my big question is that the game, or at this point, are you in zero sum? Is it truly you're just competing with the other, like I think about like going back to this alcohol example, when Bud Light is advertising, are they trying to convert new beer drinkers, or is it literally just like, nope, that group of people that are going to have whatever 75 beers a week, as unbelievable as that is, I got to get them drinking Bud Light instead of Michelob Light, and that's all that's going on in marketing is the war over that very, very valuable small cohort of people.
Mike, have you read Super Consumers from Eddie?
I haven't.
I'll send you a copy. He's one of our advisors. It's a really good book. It's backing this theory up that like there are consumers out there in every category that like they're the super of 9 categories, right? So like what you're talking about is like a woman who has a cabinet full of drinkware. I promise you that exact person is a super of like 8 other things too.
Yeah.
Right. So like one way to think of it is like, what are the other categories that your customer, your super is a super of?
Yeah. And to some extent, we know the answer of that. Like for a woman that's 25 to 45 that has 30 of them, she's probably a super of shoes. She's probably the type of person that's like, I want different shoes for every outfit. And I want, and there's some fashion spending categories that there's a similar kind of. It's interesting what you said about Keurig. I bet if we could get into Keurig's data set, I bet what we would find is they're in 37 million households, but 1 million of those households drive 50% of the pod
they're
purchasing.
very public. So one of the ladies that sits on my board of advisors, she used to be the president of Keurig. From like a couple 100 million to like 2.5 billion, some stupid growth thing. Her name's Michelle Stacy. She's freaking brilliant. And I'm pretty sure all the data is public, but like they are absolutely a power law. It's like, it's a small percentage of Keurig customers that buys an obscene amount of pods every year.
Yeah.
Right. And that's
so this is a fascinating idea to me, because there's this piece of me that's like, I want net new customers. And then there's this other piece of me that's like, the drinkware industry probably ends up being who wins with this very small cohort of like 5 million people. Like that probably shifts things more than anything else, potentially. And I can't necessarily reconcile those two ideas or what that means when you're trying to turn that into strategy.
Mike, I actually think you've got more reach though. If your media mix is where you're at, I actually think you definitely have more reach. I would say, and the 2 places I would go would probably be TV and YouTube.
Yep.
And there's a diminishing return as you scale into that. But I've seen multiple times with especially brands who haven't been on TV, when you start, there's a huge spike. And especially if you're omni-channel and you don't care or you can't
where they buy.
If they're going to where they buy. I've heard of, who was I talking to? I'm blanking on the brand, but they sell a lot in retail as well as online. And they did an MMM or some kind of measurement solution on their TV impact. And they did see that over 50% of it was going to either Amazon or retail, but, continue to spend into it because there's a lot of people who aren't on Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah. So talk me into this, because the YouTube thing that I've heard, Matt, maybe it was you that said this, and this made a lot of sense to me, is like with Lomi, if you pull back on your YouTube advertising
for us,
then your Facebook numbers go to crap. That basically like these things stack.
Channels. TV is my fastest moving converting customer cohort, and it's by 2x. So somebody who discovers Lomi on television converts 2 times faster than any other channel. The next fastest being YouTube.
Okay, so and that makes sense, right? Because you've got a product that's fairly complicated.
Yeah, long.
And like to get the idea, they need to see 20, 30, 40 seconds of like explanation. Yep. So my question is, because like I'm with you, Sarah, I would love to be able to open up those channels. And like you said, when you're omni-channel, you've got kind of an unfair competitive advantage. There's so many different ways to soak up that demand. The question / problem I've had is our product is so obvious that does it make sense for YouTube? Does it make sense for TV? Or, is there a particular approach? Back to school is one area where we've thought like maybe this really does make sense. And back to school, we could have a whole different conversation about that, because like when you're going after back to school people, like going after people that are already your customers makes sense because they're buying it every year. But I'm also like, it seems like anything I read about TV is just like, if you want to light money on fire, do traditional, TV advertising. So Sarah, be the bastion of hope for traditional TV. Tell us why it's not dead.
Yeah, for sure. I used to think the same. I actually fought hard when Olakai was my client at CTC. I was like, you guys got to get rid of this. This is dumb. Don't do it. Then I got internal. And as I started to get more into the data and then actually seeing the impact, it is pretty convincing. And I think there's a couple things that I would say that there is, like I said before, there is a diminishing return. And after talking with a lot of different companies who are spending pretty large budgets on TV, I don't think you should go above 30%. I think 30% is really high. I would probably stick around like a 10%. But if you're able to add that into your fuel, you're reaching incremental eyeballs, and those people are then going to search for you in some way, shape, or form. And it also gives you this like credibility that is a little bit weird, but it's still there. And I think there's a lot of thought out there that, linear TV is dead. I was just looking this up before. There's still 87 million households have cable right now. It's about 65% of the households in the US still have some form of cable right now. And so there's a lot of people that you're still able to reach on those channels. There's just a smart way to be able to do it. And so, I mean, we can talk a whole lot about measurement in terms of how you can do that in a really smart way to make sure you're actually getting incremental ability. But one of the cool things I was able to do at Olakai is we were managing both US and Canada. And Canada was a pretty small business, but because we looked at them holistically, and at the time, US was doing really well, I basically said, hey, let's take some of that budget from the US. I don't think we need as much of it, and let's pump it into Canada. And we went ahead and did like a very small TV test there, and the business just skyrocketed. It was really wild to see. And then there's, again, it kind of like there's a point where it kind of tapers off. But I think if you're talking about incremental eyeballs and you're not there yet, I think that's a great place to test out.
So how did you, just out of curiosity, Sarah, what you basically got to it was, all right, I think this US linear spend is making sense, but we're probably spending more than we need to. Let's move some of it over to Canada. Like, how did you measure things like incrementality and when, you were at probably as much as you should be spending? How did you think about that?
Yeah. So I worked with an incrementality platform for a little while, and it didn't work out very well, unfortunately. But an incrementality on linear is actually really expensive to run because you have to do it regionally. And once you start doing regional buys, those can get very pricey.
Yeah.
So, but the way that I thought about it is, one, obviously, what is the platform telling you? But also really understanding what the attribution windows are. I posted about this the other day. There's some TV platforms and agencies that their attribution window for traffic would be 30 days after they saw it, and then another 30 days after that for view. And I was like, no, fuck that. Like, if you tell me like within the first like 5 minutes if they go to the site, and then tell me within 7 days if they purchase, or 7 to 30 days, whatever it is. But so I think, one, understanding that attribution, but then two, the biggest thing that I would track, especially for you, would be direct and search traffic. But I would find a way that you can combine direct and search traffic from paid and organic on Google, but also on Amazon. And if you combine those as a whole and look at your historicals and how they've trended, and then when you start TV, if that doesn't increase, then something's definitely wrong, because that's just the obvious consumer behavior that they're going to do.
It makes sense. One of the things, I've shared this before, but one of the things that's weird about us on Amazon, about 55 to 60% of our visits to PDP pages, and we've got a big Amazon business, come through simple modern search terms. It's basically like our second website, which is interesting from a strategy perspective.
Sean, what do you think?
Okay, so I'm glad we have a fractional head of growth here, because I think she gave you a good plan. And if you're looking to hire her, Mike, I think you could email her after this.
This is actually a very elaborate job interview, Sarah. Sorry, we should have told you.
I was going to take some time and pitch you on if I was hired as a fractional head of growth at Simple Modern, what I would suggest you do. And
are you in the market, Sean? Because I'm listening.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how this fucking wallet shit works out. But I think Sarah brought up a lot of very good points about incrementality and top of funnel. And she said 10% on TV. And really what we're talking about is 10% of spend going to a, awareness play, if it's on TV or if it's on influencer or whatever. And Mike, you have a, I'm gonna treat you like Jason for a second. You have the world's smallest problems. You're like, I have all this distribution. My business is growing. How do I figure out what's driving these results? And you're like, I want a new CAC of $20 on my Shopify website. Well, your Shopify website's about 25% of your business, right? So I think if I was your CMO, I'd be like, we're going to figure out a percentage of our revenue we want to spend on marketing. This is going to be our MER target. And what I'm going to do is put that money into new diverse places to try to drive overall revenue up over a 30-day lift period. And I'm going to look at new site visits as like my North Star metric, right? So
Okay. New site visits across like organic new site visits or direct search, like how, or just generally like people that are new to site?
We're going to measure branded search volume over time as one of the key things. And we're just going to, every single day we have a dollar figure. How much did we spend for a search of the term Ridge Wallet and Ridge Rings and Ridge Travel? We track all those things separately. So we're going to measure that. And then I'm going to be like, right now I'm spending $2,000 a day on Reddit. I'm spending $2,000 a day on Pinterest. The results look as good as Facebook, but the difference is 95% of those people are net new site visitors tracked across.
Yeah, those are micro communities that are not overlapping with, that makes sense.
I would do the same thing and be like, hey, look, we're going to spend 10% of our revenue on marketing. I know that's a big jump for you. And I'm like, we're going to put that 10%, 30% will just be in top of funnel awareness that we're not going to be able to measure. We're only going to track that if people are searching us or buying us in store. 30% could be on the tertiary networks you're already spending money on, and 30% will just be on Facebook ASC campaigns or branded search campaigns, things we know are going to convert people. And what you'll see is your new CAC number on Shopify will be above $20, but the overall business will really start to grow. And that's how I think you can get 50+% growth and, take advantage of that omni-channel. It's a hindrance when it comes to data integrity and data quality. But the beauty is, I mean, every single day I sell 300 wallets in Best Buy stores or whatever, right? And that's just people walking in knowing the brand. And you have that to the ultimate degree because you're in so many more places and your Amazon crushes. So that's what I would do if I was you, Mike.
That's really helpful. I mean, to your point, Sean, one of the things that we're kind of trying to just like think through is, are there times where we can buy better placement in a store because that's a form of marketing, but it's also subsidized by sales? So a good example is we've only been able to get into front of store target opportunities like twice. And both times we crushed it. In fact, and this kind of speaks to some of what you're saying, the last time was maybe in 2019 or something, maybe it was 21. Anyway, we had a really good front of store program and it did really well. I think it was 21. And it's hard to get that space. Sometimes you may even have to pay to get that space. But I had people that were like, "Oh, congrats on being in Target." And I'm like, "We've been in Target for 4 years when that happened." But the reality is, you're just getting new eyeballs. You're getting new people because if people don't walk by the drinkware aisle in Target, they don't necessarily know that you're there. So I think that's where we're trying to figure out, like, okay, how much money are we trying to put towards opportunities like that versus. And then you mentioned it, but we're still trying to figure out how much do you invest in influencer, because influencer, it feels like to me, is like the ultimate one of these where it's really hard to attribute, but we all know it really matters.
Dude, influencer is TV. TV is influencer. It is a high trust way to drive awareness for your brand with shitty tracking. So take 10% of your budget and put it into one of the two. And maybe if you're in a growth phase, you put 20%. If you've reached the penetration, I mean, Mike, it wouldn't be uncommon for you to spend 15% of your budget on Facebook ASC and the rest just going to literally brand awareness plays because you're a commodity good with perfect distribution.
High repeat rate,
I think you're right. And I think that really what you guys are saying, and this is the part that's tough, is so like I've got this thing I've learned, being a CEO and especially having started the company is like early on, you guys know our story that we started with $200,000. Everything was hand to mouth. Everything had to be tracked. I'm super analytical. And then you get to a point where I think those things start to work against you. You have to think a little bit more qualitatively, or you just start leaving things on the table. And this is the problem is like, I've been averse to influencer and TV and some of this stuff because it isn't as easy to show that the numbers are backing out. But now we're at a place where we have the capital and we have the scale where it's probably the right move. And so I'm trying to outgrow my own kind of wiring and habits I built, and so for anybody listening, this is one of the hard things about when you start a company is that you'll build muscles in year 1, year 2, year 4, and then all of a sudden in year 8, those same muscles will betray you if you don't grow with the company.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's so true. It's very true. And you've got, I think with your product, I like Sean's point about influencer is TV and TV is influencer. I agree and disagree with him a little bit on that, but I think that with your product, there's such a cool play that you could have there in terms of even using influencer content on TV ads, just showcasing all of the different people who are using it. And again, using that hook of like, you need to wait for your husband to buy this. Get it yourself. You can probably afford it yourself.
Right. Well, thanks for the free. Matt, did you have any thoughts? You didn't say much.
No, I mean, I think Sean nailed it. I think, look, Sarah asked the ultimate question, which is like, what's your media mix? And at your size, I think I would be thinking a lot about that. The other thing like that for me is really getting in the head of this consumer angle that you're talking about, right? So like this idea that there are a core group of people that own a ton of your product, I would really want to know, like you have a guess as to who they are. I would want to know a lot more about them. I want to know, and I would probably even build a media profile.
Yeah.
Of like who that person is, like what media do they consume? And that would drive some portion of how I think about allocation and mix.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good
point. That makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
And it seems to me like that's the thing with both influencer and TV is like, it's kind of a different type of targeting, but you're able to go after groups of people and get those incremental eyeballs. So good thoughts. Appreciate you guys giving me the free consulting.
Sarah, this was awesome, man. Thank you for coming on. This is really great.
Thanks so much for having me.
We did a little Mike Beckham therapy today.
Yes, that's pretty much every operator's session.
Man,
Sarah, where can people find you?
Yeah,
if they want to follow.
Yeah, so Twitter, LinkedIn, best place, just Sarah Carusona. And I think, and I just got approved to be on Mentor Pass. I guess I'm cool enough for that now.
Right on. Super cool.
Yeah, but thank you all so much for this. It was a great honor. I've been a little bit of a nerdy fan in the background for a while, so I was quite honored to get asked to be on.
Very cool.
Awesome having you on. You added a ton. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, everybody, that was episode 62. Go ahead and give Sarah a follow. We're going to try to bring in more guests. Maybe we'll go to a couple more episodes a week. We have a lot of cool things cooking. Go to the 9 Operators website. By this point, we already have the Marketing Operators podcast that you know and love, and just go ahead and subscribe. We're working on a lot of cool stuff, trying to make like the one-stop educational platform for e-commerce entrepreneurs. So just trying to make it a fun, cool thing everybody can come on and be a part of. So thank you for being here. You're early in the journey. Episode 62 is a wrap. Thank you.